Aloha, Inspired Moneymakers. This is Inspired Money, the live stream podcast where we invite a panel of experts to help us do better with our money. Today, we're creating a money show like no other. So, thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Advisor Andy, and today's episode is Mindful Wealth, Cultivating a Balanced Approach to Financial Success. Let me ask you something. When it comes to money, do you feel in control, or does it feel like money is controlling you? Surveys consistently indicate that money is a top stressor for most people. Here at Inspired Money, we've learned that money is more than just a tool for survival. It's an energy, one that has the potential to reflect your deepest values, create peace, and bring purpose to your life. But here's the thing. Most of us never learn how to use it in a way that aligns with what we really care about. When you decide to do better with your money, you're bombarded with financial advice, how to budget, how to invest, how to get rich. But rarely are we taught to ask, how can I manage my money mindfully? How can I make financial decisions that bring me peace and fulfillment, not just stress and anxiety? Today, we're going to discuss mindful wealth, what it means to approach money with mindfulness, gratitude, and a clear sense of purpose. Our guests will guide you through practical strategies for incorporating meditation, aligning your investments with your values, and using gratitude to transform your relationship with money. And make sure you stick around for the last segment where we're going to discuss financial anxiety and share mindful strategies for managing stress and finding calm in your financial decisions. So if you've ever felt like your money habits didn't reflect the life that you want to live, or if you're ready to approach wealth with more intention, you're in the right place. Before we jump in, this episode of Inspired Money is brought to you by my financial advisory firm, Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. If you have not plotted your financial goals or documented a financial plan, I invite you to do a 3-minute plan. It's quick and easy. It can give you insights into whether your retirement savings are going to meet your needs in retirement. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. That's GETPLAN. Inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. And just take 3 minutes out of your day because a little planning goes a long way. The earlier you start, the better. Let's see. Let's bring in our panel of experts. Let me start with Leisa Peterson. She's a financial coach, author of The Mindful Millionaire, helping individuals heal their relationship with money and achieve true prosperity by integrating self-worth and financial well-being. Leisa, I'm so glad that you could make it.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
She's coming from an Airbnb, so I'm so glad that the timing just worked out. Amanda Clayman is back on the show. She's an internationally renowned financial therapist. She helps people bring life and money into balance. She's also the host of the Audible original podcast, Emotional Investment, and the author of several courses for LinkedIn Learning. Amanda, welcome back.
Thanks, Andy. So glad to be here today.
We also have Marco Vangelisti back on the show. It's been a little while. He's a no-harm investor and advocate for positive and restorative investing. With over 20 years of experience managing equity portfolios and developing risk models, he's a founder of Slow Money. He's dedicated to democratizing both financial literacy and aligning finance with sustainability and social responsibility. Marco, you're in Italy, but welcome in.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me back, Andy.
We hope that after this program, I hope that you'll eat some gelato for me. I miss it a lot. And rounding out
I'll have 2 of them.
Grazie. Thank you. Rounding out our panel today, we have Leah Davis. She's a wealth and wellness coach dedicated to inspiring Black, Indigenous, Latina, and all women of color to achieve financial freedom through holistic coaching that combines financial education, mindfulness, and spirituality. Got it. Leah, welcome.
Andy, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me to join everybody today.
I'm delighted to have this group of panelists all here today. It's going to be a great show. Let's jump right into segment 1. Mindfulness in financial planning helps create a balanced, intentional approach to managing money. By staying fully present during financial decisions, mindfulness reduces impulsive behavior and promotes clarity. Mindful budgeting ensures that spending aligns with personal values and long-term goals, encouraging individuals to review and adjust their financial plans regularly. Mindful spending emphasizes the importance of intentionality, where a pause before each purchase can help determine if it truly supports happiness or merely satisfies a temporary desire. Incorporating meditation and reflective practices into financial planning reduces stress and provides emotional balance. Meditation allows individuals to gain clarity and approach financial decisions with calmness, even in moments of pressure. Moreover, practicing gratitude for financial resources shifts focus from scarcity to abundance, fostering contentment and reducing unnecessary financial comparisons. By integrating mindfulness into financial strategies, individuals can cultivate a healthier relationship with money while enhancing their financial well-being. A quick shout out to Enrique and a reminder to all the viewers to drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. And let me start with Leisa. In your book, The Mindful Millionaire, you talk about the importance of shifting from scarcity to abundance. How have you personally connected meditation with money?
I used to be a financial advisor and I left 10 years ago. And I was really, really curious when I left that role because I wanted to understand why people really struggled, oftentimes as their advisor, before that as a mortgage banker, in this relationship with money. And ultimately, it came down to noticing that some people had patterns around scarcity and some people didn't. And so sadly, and I talk about this in my book, I was definitely in the camp that struggled with scarcity. And it took a lot of introspection to understand that many of the beliefs that I have about money came from when I was a child. Money was really tight. It was a source of deep stress in our family. And I found out that I wasn't alone in that a lot of people really struggle. And ultimately, through a meditation practice, I started really understanding that these beliefs that had been created when I was young no longer applied as an adult. I had been very good with money. I was a self-made millionaire by the time I was in my mid-30s, and I didn't need to live in scarcity anymore. But those patterns were so strong, I had to unlearn a lot of things that I had adopted when I was a child.
Interesting. Amanda, I'm assuming that this is not uncommon. This is something that you hear frequently. Can you help us decode some of our beliefs and behaviors? Like, how do you see mindfulness helping clients to become more intentional with their financial decisions?
Well, one of the things that mindfulness helps us do is to be aware of our emotional state. And our emotional state is a profoundly physiological experience. So mindfulness might help us recognize, for example, like, wow, my heart is beating really fast, or I feel a sort of fuzziness in my head. These are all indications, frankly, that we are in a fight, flight, or freeze response and experience. And when this is happening in our brains and bodies, we are really not able to do the cognitive tasks that are such an important and fundamental part of the money management process. Also being able to kind of tune into some of the deeper emotions that we're feeling that are deep, but maybe a little bit quieter than something that's as loud as, say, this anxiety, which is the thing that's often the most present and most that's at the forefront of our attention once we start paying attention to money. And the thing that I really work on with clients a lot of the time, it has become kind of a real focus of my practice, in fact, is helping people to attune to that physiological response, to understand that this is kind of how our brains and bodies work, but it's definitely not a system that is calibrated to the complexity of modern life, to the complexity of the decisions and challenges that we face, specifically related to our money. And in fact, if we want to make good decisions, if we want to be wise, if we want to direct our life, it involves us building a different kind of tool set than we would necessarily do if we were directly saying, just, I need to learn how money works. We need to learn how our bodies work as part of that.
Interesting. Leah, I want to ask you, since you work with many women of color, Talk a little bit about, are there unique challenges and how gratitude and reflection practices fit into that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. There are unique challenges to women of color, especially those of us who have experienced any sort of violence and trauma. And that can, and what I work with my clients on is just like Amanda was talking about, is getting connected to the physical responses. And what I do with my clients that have experienced financial trauma, and I'll give an example. If it's a woman of color who grew up in a home where there was, she was exposed to domestic violence, or maybe there was instability in where they lived, there could be a lot of trauma when it comes to feeling like the rug can be pulled from under her at any moment in time, which then creates difficulties in doing things like making financial goals, because she may feel like everything's going to be taken away from me. So she's all constantly on alert. So what I do with my clients, oftentimes for women, is we create safety plans when it comes to managing their finances and doing the tasks. So making sure she has a plan before, during, and after to care for herself and to regulate the experience that she's having that may be causing her to not move or make decisions and just run and hide potentially from managing her finances. So that's the type of work that I do with my clients, and it's very common. And this is something that I talk about all the time because it's often missed for those in financial services working with women of color.
Marco, what are your feelings? How has reflection, meditation, and mindfulness helped you to become a better investor and align your financial decisions with long-term goals like sustainability?
Well, I told my story in the other podcast I did with you, but very briefly, I was a part of a team managing a large fund investing in emerging markets. And our clients were foundations and endowments, including environmental foundations. And one year I realized that one of the best performing stocks in our portfolio was a palm oil company that had destroyed the forest in Borneo. And so that was the time when I left the industry and I thought about other things. I got involved with slow money and other activities, but I never paid attention to my portfolio until 2 years later. I was sitting on a meditation cushion and I was doing a metta practice, which is sending well wishes, first to your surrounding, the family and friends, and then wider and wider circles. And as I was sitting there, I realized my money was still invested in the same fund that had destroyed those forests in Malaysia. And how could I send well wishes to all, sentient being when my portfolio was still invested in something that destroyed the habitat of the orangutan? So that meditation session was what got me off the cushion, literally. And I divested completely from all publicly traded companies because I did not know how those companies were operating, and it's very hard to know. And from there, I rebuilt my investments completely aligned with my values, with the key goal of being aware of what the money was doing out there, which was impossible for me to do in a mutual fund or even in things that were simply ESG screened. So I know this is longer answer than you wanted, but I'll save some time in my future interventions.
No, that's fascinating. I'm wondering if any of the other panelists have seen epiphany moments like that result in drastic action. Lisa.
I can completely relate to what Marco is saying. I remember when I was a financial advisor, there wasn't much discussion about ESG investing. And when it did come up, they would talk about the poor returns you'd get. And I had no idea. And it wasn't until I left my role and I had a person come on my podcast many years ago, and I started learning about investing and divesting of the traditional stock market. And I'm right there with you, Marco. Like, I think just my mindfulness practice over the past 25 years has caused me to pay attention at a closer level of like, what do I really believe in? Where do I want my money going? And how can it make a difference in the world? And one of the other things is because, back to what Leah was saying, I grew up in a very financially unsafe situation growing up. The stock market has never been easy for me because it feels unsafe. And when I started investing in this new way, I found that even if the market were to go down, I knew that my money was making a difference, a positive difference in the lives of others. And that would carry me through those times of not feeling safe.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think that in this like go-go world that we live in, we were talking off camera before we started about technology and screen time, and I think that we're inundated with information. It's always go, go, go. So the fact that we can take time to meditate and to be still, we need that time to be thoughtful. I think what you guys were talking about is a good segue to our segment 2. Ethical investing allows individuals to align their financial portfolios with personal values by prioritizing investments in companies that demonstrate strong environmental, social, and governance practices. This approach avoids industries like tobacco or fossil fuels, and instead focuses on sectors that promote sustainability, fair labor, and social justice. Impact investing, a subset of ethical investing, goes further by seeking investments that provide both financial returns and measurable positive social or environmental outcomes. ESG ratings help investors assess a company's commitment to these principles, guiding more informed decisions. Negative screening excludes companies that conflict with ethical standards, such as those involved in pollution or human rights abuses. While some believe that ethical investing may compromise financial returns, research indicates that companies with strong ESG performance often exhibit long-term resilience. Ethical investing offers the opportunity to achieve financial growth while contributing positively to society. Marco, your approach is extreme in that you're not investing in publicly traded companies anymore. Can you talk about like people's concerns about ethical investing, the idea of you have to sacrifice performance? What has been your experience?
Let me give you a practical example. I'm a treasurer of the endowment fund of a spiritual congregation close to where I live. And our money is invested in a fund that is managed centrally by the spiritual community in the United States. And they have made the decision not to invest in Nvidia. And the reason is that 50% of the engineers that work on AI believe that there is at least a 10% chance that humanity could actually not survive because they fail to control that technology. Okay, so that is a decision based on values. Now, if you follow the markets, you know that Nvidia was up 180% in the last year, and it's a good portion of the S&P, which basically means that if you out of a set of value decided not to invest in that company, there is no way you could have matched the return of the S&P this year, right? So there are situations where you have to ask yourself how much you really care about your values, or if at the end of the day, if there is any concession in terms of return, your values are ready to be discarded. So while I agree with you that given the ESG criteria, that were some studies done in the past that the performance is not necessarily impacted, in part is because those screens do not really do very much. But if you go to a more radical position like I've taken, that I only invest in things that I really know and they're doing good out there in the world, I don't care really what the S&P is doing. I don't compare myself to that. So I expect that possibly the return is less, because if there is extraction in the standard financial industry, I don't want to benefit from that. So it's an interesting conversation that we can have, but that's an example. I do not care, frankly, what the S&P is doing. And the nice thing about not being invested in anything that trades is that you don't have to keep up with what's happening day by day to the S&P or the Dow. And it's very liberating, frankly.
I recall having a Bloomberg terminal on my desk, and it would just give you stress to see the flashing green and red, minute by minute, versus having a database that got updated every 24 hours and you didn't have the blinking lights, but you could be much more thoughtful in your research and what companies you were following. Leisa, you talked a little bit about your experience with ESG and ethical investing. How does that fit into the framework of the Mindful Millionaire?
I think exactly what Marco is sharing, that when we become more cognizant of our values, that's when we can start to make those changes. Sadly, back to scarcity, one of the challenges when we are living in scarcity, which basically says there's not enough of money or resources or something else, back to what we were talking about earlier, we don't make the best decisions for ourselves. And so what I've found is we have to meet these topics that we're talking about may not resonate with us today, but when we start to uncover our values more and more and ask ourselves these questions, like what really is important to me? What is going to cause me to sleep better at night? What's going to cause me to have a better lifestyle? We change, we're more open to the change. The other thing that I want to say back to what Marco was sharing is that when we are really in tune with what's important to us and we have a solid financial plan, it's easier to make those decisions. But if we don't know how much we have and how much we're spending and where that's taking us, it can be difficult to kind of move away from, let's say, the stock market and the returns that we're getting. And so back to the mindfulness, I feel like a really, really important mindful approach to money is to have a pretty clear idea of how your money is being used and how you're going to lay out the rest of your life. Like, what are your needs and what it's important to you? And so I feel like it's this circle that we have to pay just incredible attention to really get where we want to go so that we can, invest according to our values.
Leah, should someone just getting started with investing consider ESG?
Absolutely consider it. It is something that is available, and when you're just starting out, it's kind of like, you're able to soak things up and learn. And you can, when you're considering ESG investing, when you're new, you can learn about companies that can benefit your community, benefit a specific group of people, benefit the environment. And if those are things that are really important to somebody, and starting out with that, I think that's great, because then just the ability to have that peace of mind and knowing that your money is going, that's in line with what you value. If you value, that the world is a better place, that there's clean air and water for communities, and that you're contributing towards that some way, somehow, that can just create more appreciation for investing. And I think it will encourage individuals to start putting their money in investing in their values and doing it more and more. So I think it's absolutely a wonderful thing to consider when you're first starting out.
It's interesting. I guess taking a lead from some athletes or successful entrepreneurs, and I'm talking about Black athletes or entrepreneurs, they really make an effort to go back to the communities from which they came and support the small businesses in those communities and really try to have a positive impact.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And especially when it comes to women in investing, and especially women of color, there is the added of taking care of not just ourselves, but our family and community. It's very much part of the culture, especially with Black women. And so when Black women are first starting out to invest, and they're learning that where I'm investing my dollars is going to help my community, there will be more and more. So I'm excited for the future of ESG investing and how it's going to open up more opportunities for communities of color to continue to contribute to their communities where they're from.
Amanda, with your financial therapist hat on, what are your thoughts? Like, can ethical investing reduce financial anxiety?
As I was listening to the wisdom and the contributions of my fellow panelists here, I was really thinking, gosh, one obstacle that I think we don't always attend to is whether or not we were raised to believe that our values were important, or that we were even allowed to have things that were important to us. Some of us grew up in families where we had a really dominating kind of parental structure, where maybe there was a narcissist parent who really was the center of everything. And it can actually feel quite threatening for people to begin to tune into what's important to them if they weren't allowed to have things that were important to them, that they had the ability to protect when they were younger. So sometimes when we ask people like, hey, what's important to you? What happens is kind of deep unconscious stuff can come up around that, around self-worth, around agency. And in my work, I'm often looking at those places where money kind of reveals those places where we need to heal, or we have opportunities to grow, and identifying our values and feeling like we can really claim those and protect them is a very important initial step in that process that sometimes just doesn't get the attention that I think it deserves.
What are some of the questions we should ask ourselves to help grow out of that?
So we can ask, like, if we start to think about what's important to us, and then that question has a lot of anxiety attached to it. So even when we start to think about it, we notice that something just about that very question makes us feel unsafe. The first thing to do is to be curious and notice that response, and to think like, okay, for me to be able to protect what's important to me, what are some of the scary thoughts that come up around that? Or what is the voice, the inner critic, or maybe an internalized voice of a family member who we anticipate their judgment, their criticism? If we can start to kind of unpack where that lives in our own mentality, that can be the start to doing that uncovering and exploration work.
Thank you. Before moving on to the next segment, I just wanted to ask Marco, because when it comes to ESG, I think a lot of us, like for the layman, we hear about different screens and different filters. Your approach, you go way beyond that. So what's your advice for people who want to align their investments more with what matters to them?
Well, I'm not a purist in the sense that every step counts. So if you're invested in traditional funds and you move to ESG, that's a great step. And if you have the flexibility and the ability, then you can move beyond that, because ESG, frankly, is not sufficient. I'm just going to give you a little example. There's a company called Cisco, it's a big food distributor in the United States. And it's part of the Calvert US Large Cap Co-Responsible Index. So it's been screened for ESG. But then in 2018, there was a documentary I saw called Ghost Fleet, talking about slave labor in fishing vessels in Indonesia and Malaysia. And it's a heart-wrenching movie. I would highly recommend people to watch it. And it turned out that 38% of the suppliers of Cisco were those companies that were using slave labor. And thanks to an action by Parnassus in 2019, it finally cleaned up its act. So, ESG is great in the sense that is encouraging companies to be a little bit more responsible, and certainly it's better than nothing. But again, it's impossible for me personally to really practice aware investing, because the operations of those companies are very complex. So I don't discount that. And also the other thing is, depending on your ability to take risks. So for example, I had some sufficient savings, but for example, I would never say to a single mother working in Richmond, California for Chevron, you should quit your job because Chevron is participating in the problem of global warming or CO2 emission, right? I mean, you have to do what you can, starting where you are. And so every little step counts, and we shouldn't be judging people for not being perfect. And so I applaud the ESG movement and the promotion of ESG. For those that can take a little bit more risk, they should also take a more substantial step in the direction of aligning their investment with their values.
I will definitely add Ghost Fleet to my list of movies to watch. Anybody else want to chime in? Okay, let's go to segment 3. We're going to talk about gratitude and generosity. Integrating gratitude and generosity into personal finance helps create a meaningful and balanced approach to wealth. Gratitude encourages individuals to appreciate what they have, fostering contentment and reducing impulsive spending. This shift from scarcity to abundance promotes thoughtful financial decisions and long-term security. For example, reflecting on daily financial blessings, such as being able to cover bills or enjoy small luxuries, can help align spending with values. Generosity, whether through charitable giving or supporting community initiatives, strengthens financial well-being while contributing positively to society. Acts of financial generosity can lead to increased happiness and reduced stress, as giving creates a sense of fulfillment. By incorporating these practices, individuals can transform their relationship with money, ensuring that financial success is not just about accumulation, but about personal growth, community impact, and lasting fulfillment. Leah, I think that you're a survivor of abusive relationships as a child and an adult. Can you talk about how do you incorporate gratitude as a tool for financial empowerment and healing?
Oh, yes, gratitude. It is something that I practice daily, if not moment by moment, depending on what's going on in life. Because when life gets really difficult and hard, it's really easy to not be grateful for everything that I have. And I know there's many women that are experiencing that have also endured, being harmed by someone that they love or as a child. And so with gratitude, it's a matter of moving along and making financial decisions and living the life that we always dream of. Again, if there's that feeling of that impending doom, the rug's going to be pulled from under us, and we can pause. And when we have that mindfulness and practice of gratitude and even writing it down, maybe every day or night, we're able to remember how far we've come, what we have in place, all the things that are available and supporting us right now and in the moment. And that makes a huge difference, especially when life gets challenging and it's uncertain and we just don't know what's going to happen next. But when we can be satisfied with what we have and to have that appreciation for it, it just really takes the focus on the what could possibly happen and all of the catastrophizing things that people tend to do when coming from a state of fear. And so gratitude, it is a practice that I support my clients with. I practice gratitude every day. And like I started out earlier today, I'm just so grateful to be here because this is a wonderful experience to be sharing in this conversation with all of you.
Right back at you. I'm grateful that you could make it as well. Amanda, we know that money can be tied to our emotions and feelings. How does generosity help clients to break free from the stress of constantly seeking financial security?
Well, one thing to know about security is that we can look for it kind of by looking at what we need, or we can find security by looking at what we have. It's very common, I think, as human beings, we scan our environment. We're kind of seeing if I have this feeling right now, what is it that I'm lacking that's creating this unpleasant emotional state? We can reframe that. And as Leah was just talking about, like we can turn our attention. So we use our ability to reframe a situation to just kind of redeploy our attention to something else that is going to help us either step away from a more categorical sort of assessment of like, I am in a bad situation, therefore everything about this is bad. By attending to the parts of our situation that we can feel grateful for, that helps us, first of all, break through some of that really, really categorical black or white thinking, to remind ourselves that even in a state or a moment in our life where things are not all okay, we don't have all of the answers, there may be some things that we are feeling very deeply or deeply worried about, that's not the whole picture. And so this helps us kind of settle our bodies, so help us to feel not just like an intellectual sense of gratitude, but a felt sense of safety around recognizing in those moments where our fear kind of response is going to turn our attention to what we lack, that we have some agency there, using our attention, using our choice to bring ourselves back to a focus on something that's going to change our physiological state, that's going to open up a sense of possibility, and that's going to help us actually have a functional advantage that may be the difference in us being able to take those actions that didn't feel available when we felt like everything was so doom and gloom and urgent.
Marco, do you have examples of how investors through generosity have made both financial gains and positive social impacts?
Well, I have an example that is very recent. I practice generosity every day. And as I mentioned, I'm here in Italy because my mother just passed. And the main feeling I felt was generosity, because I've been, not generosity, gratitude, because that's what I've been practicing. So I'm very grateful that I was able to spend quite a bit of time with my mother in the last year, and grateful that I reconciled with her after many years. And I had a really good relationship in the last few years with her, and grateful that she passed in a smooth way, and so on. Now, regarding investments, if you're involved in slow money investments, what you're trying to support are farmers and food producers. They're doing the right thing by the land, and just seeing what they can accomplish on the ground makes you so happy and grateful for their work that any investment in that space becomes enriching, regardless of the return you might get. And that's an experience that I wish a lot of people could experience, could feel.
Yeah, everybody has to. What's the website for Slow Money?
Slowmoney.org.
So everyone should visit slowmoney.org to learn more. Leisa, how do you encourage your community to practice generosity? And I'm curious, what impact does that have on their financial prosperity?
I have a very interesting path with generosity and I think gratitude. And before I answer your question, I just want to say, for me, gratitude was something that I had to learn, that it wasn't really taught in my home. We were always like feeling like victims, and I never got modeled that in my home. And so for people who may struggle with gratitude, what I will say is today, had I not learned it, I wouldn't be sitting here on this call, and I wouldn't have the life that I'm living had I not learned how to feel gracious about the life that I'm living, no matter what the situation is. And I think a lot of what I've done with my community is I try to teach through examples. So I share a lot of the inner workings of the struggles that I've had to personally go through and what it meant on the other side, because I feel like real life stories, and I'm willing to be very vulnerable and candid about my own struggles and in maybe even generosity, learning how to be generous, learning what that even means to my life and the impact that it can make in the lives of others. And I think for me, what I've also noticed is sometimes the most generous things that I can do aren't just me giving money away, which I love to do, but it's my time and my expertise and my knowledge that seems to have the biggest impact in people's lives. And so I feel fortunate today that's how I've been able to structure my business, by being fortunate and feeling like I have enough. I just feel like I'm a never ending, person able to give and give and give because of, taking care of money early in life and being in this position now.
I love that. You can give your time, talent, or treasures. Anyone else on this segment? Okay, let's go to. Go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in and acknowledge. I love what Leisa just said about sort of sometimes when we talk about mindfulness, when we talk about gratitude, one of the first things that we're discovering as we become curious about these different tools or approaches is that that's not what lines up with our felt experience. I think if you talk to any beginning meditator, they will all tell you how much they hate meditation in the beginning. And I just want to sort of like open up our arms here in this conversation for all of the times where we are trying to practice some of these new ways of being, and where that exposes some difficulty, where that exposes some pain, and how it is, even from the very beginning, how it is that we frame our difficulties with some of these changes, and how we teach ourselves in many cases to grow, to heal, even as we're growing and healing.
Thank you for the addition. Certainly, change doesn't always come easily. So there are many ups, downs, and plateaus in that process. Let's go to segment 4. Financial autonomy empowers individuals to make independent choices regarding their careers, education, and lifestyle without relying on external financial support. It involves managing personal finances through earning, saving, and investing, while maintaining control over financial decisions. Income diversification, such as creating multiple revenue streams, strengthens financial security by reducing dependence on a single source. Additionally, effective debt management strategies, like structured repayment plans, help free up resources for savings and investments. Achieving financial autonomy not only enhances decision-making, but also improves emotional well-being. Studies show that financial independence reduces stress and boosts confidence, fostering personal growth. Financially autonomous individuals are better equipped to navigate challenges, pursue new opportunities, and contribute meaningfully to their communities. This autonomy leads to long-term stability and empowerment, providing the freedom to make choices aligned with personal values and goals. Ultimately, financial independence enhances both personal fulfillment and broader societal impact. Leah, do you have any strategies that you use with your clients to help, one, manage debt, and then two, build multiple streams of income so that you can achieve financial autonomy?
Yes, yes. Honestly, with many of the women that I'm coaching, to be able to truly achieve that financial autonomy, to manage the debt and to create that wealth, it's a matter of being able to trust the decisions that they're making, because they can have all the knowledge and all the information, but if there's somebody who has been gone through some trauma and they have a hard time of recognizing the decisions they're making and trusting them, and also trusting others. So first and foremost, I start with my clients on very small and working on the habits and the behaviors so they can pay off the debt, and trusting the decisions that they're making are ones that are going to work for them. And over time, it starts to snowball as they're starting to gain that excitement and recognition and seeing the results that they're making with the choices on paying down the debt, because that starts to feed into the I can trust the decisions I'm making. And then as they're learning and as I'm providing that financial education, they're also becoming more aware of the terminology and of the things to look out for and how to do different things, and being open to more opportunities that can help them, support them in paying down that debt. So like I said, first and foremost, it starts from being able to trust themselves, trust the decisions, and trust others. That's where I start with my clients.
Yeah, trusting yourself is a big one. I think we all tend to have shame and avoidance around the topic of money. So I'm curious, Amanda, how do we improve our financial situations and emotional well-being?
I really find that being able to address avoidance is kind of it's the price of admission, if you will, when it comes to money and it comes to building that trust, which Leah was just talking about, and which I agree is so critical. Avoidance is a short-term strategy where we're experiencing a high level of emotional tension, and the way that we take care of ourselves in that moment of extreme emotional tension is that we turn away from the thing that's causing this distress. That works as a short-term strategy. Unfortunately, as a long-term strategy, it tends to create a lot of other complicating issues, which of course only exacerbate the strong feelings, and then that exacerbates the avoidance. And before we know it, we're in this very vicious cycle. So the process of building trust, I think, really, really begins with cultivating the ability to notice when we have that urge to run away, and by very gently allowing in this distressing content, whether it's that scary thought or however it is that we're experiencing it, but just to meet ourselves with a level of compassion, even for a moment. So I do a lot of a kind of like structured exposure therapy when we have a high degree of avoidance around money. And one of the first steps is literally just to be able to feel it for 30 seconds. We're not even trying to do a task yet, but just to say like, okay, I'm having this feeling. What do I notice about this feeling? Can I get very descriptive about this feeling? Where in my body am I experiencing it, etc.? That's the first step in being able to sort of break the rigid patterned kind of response that would have us stuck in this cycle of avoidance.
Lisa, what are your thoughts?
Just listening to what Amanda is sharing, and I could ask her so many questions. This is so fun to have this conversation. Something that's coming to mind just around this topic of financial autonomy is I think that if people understood the benefits of getting a strong understanding of their relationship with money and then translating that into the ability to build wealth earlier in life, they would be totally focused on this. Like, I don't think people understand how dramatically your life improves when you work with somebody like Amanda or Leah, when you put the time in to understand what are your hangups, what keeps you from being able to build wealth. Because what I've seen is that many people don't even know that they're the ones who can give themselves permission to thrive in life. And if you give yourself permission to thrive in life, all of a sudden people like Leah and Amanda and Marco show up in your life, and you start making some really big decisions of what you're going to focus on. And just by focusing on these things, life gets so much better. I just wish more people understood that what we're talking about today about money and your relationship with money can change your life in so many beautiful ways. It's going to take some work, it's going to take some time, but like pulling it together not only changes your life, but it changes your children's lives, your community's lives. Like it's huge stuff. That's what I want to share.
When you're able to achieve that transformation, like what's the goal? What does that look like? How important is passive income, for example?
I think this spirit of freedom is highly still underrated because we live in a system that unfortunately can easily cause you to feel like you're just a cog in the wheel, like you can't really make a difference in the lives of others. And 10 years ago, I walked off the hamster wheel and I started this company in my late 40s, an online company, which was also really crazy for me because I knew Facebook, that was about it. But what I think about now, as I notice my peers starting to retire, and wishing that they had something else going on, I'm so grateful that 10 years ago I was brave enough to just kind of walk away and say, I'm going to figure this out. I may not have all the money I need for the rest of my life, but I'm going to figure out what it means to live a more free life and, be able to share my voice, share my thoughts, write a book, travel the world, speak on stages that I would have never dreamt possible. Like the impact that each person can make in the world requires us, I think, in many cases, to get off the hamster wheel. Money is what allows us to do that because we have this, for many of us, not very many people, I think it's unsafe to just sort of jump out of a plane without a net, but money gives us an ability to say, maybe there's a bigger meaning to my life that I haven't even been able to uncover. And so I just think that financial autonomy leads us to learn about ourselves in ways that we might not even know. And as a result of that, we get a feeling inside that our life means so much more than maybe we ever imagined. And we see that through the impact that we're making in the lives of others.
Thank you. Marco, how does the idea of financial autonomy, how does it align with the principles of slow money and restorative investing?
Well, first of all, I have to say I am impressed by those who managed to launch a study to find that financial independence reduces stress. I was wondering whether they were surprised by the outcome of that study. But I wanted to bring kind of another angle. One is obviously income diversification, and so on, which is really important. But the other one, which is important in the United States, is get off the bandwagon of comparing your life and your lifestyle to others. Because I know a lot of people that have really high salaries and they still feel stressed because they feel that they need to get more to compare to their, to keep up with their peers or something like that. So to a certain extent, being able to know what is enough and to be confident about it, not to feel less when somebody has more than you have, if you have enough. It's a really key skill to manage, to get to that sense of financial empowerment and financial independence. So that's another kind of angle to it.
No matter who you are, there's going to be somebody else who has more.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's your goal, you're just going to be chasing an endless goal, or one that is not able to be fulfilled. Anyone else, or should we move to our final segment?
Can I say one more thing, because this is an interesting. When I was working for this investment management firm, we had really good salaries. One of my colleague had a bi-propeller plane, and we use that for business sometimes. And one time he parked next to a private jet, and the expression of dejection and frustration in him was really amazing. He really wanted to get a jet, but was feeling pathetic for just having an $800,000 biplane, by engine, a regular engine plane. And so this tells me that if you keep comparing yourself to others, you'll never feel like you had enough.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of to Lisa's point of who you surround yourself with. We all want to hang out with this panel to have a healthier relationship with money. On the other side of that, I hear many stories of people who retire down to Florida, and depending on the neighborhood you're in, people tell me, oh, the conversation at the dinner party is, how big is your boat? Like, that's how they're measuring. How many feet is your boat? And it's just this competition. So yes, I've had friends that are like, yeah, so that's why I didn't like, once I was down there, I realized I didn't really like it. I'm not a boat person. Thank you for that story, Marco. Let's bring it home and go to our final segment. Financial anxiety arises from concerns about money, debt, or financial stability, often impacting both decision-making and overall well-being. Mindfulness techniques can help manage this stress by fostering awareness and control over financial habits. Regular meditation and breathing exercises offer a way to calm the mind, allowing for clearer, more focused decision-making. Mindful spending practices, such as pausing before purchases, reduce impulsive buying and ensure alignment with long-term financial goals. Building an emergency fund is a practical step toward easing financial anxiety, offering security in the face of unexpected expenses. Additionally, practicing self-compassion allows individuals to acknowledge that financial challenges are common and manageable. Reflecting on financial habits without judgment helps identify stress triggers and fosters healthier responses. By combining mindfulness with practical financial strategies, individuals can reduce anxiety, make intentional financial choices, and cultivate a healthier relationship with money. In this world, I mean, we watch financial news. There's so many things in the economy that are uncertain and out of our control. So inevitably, that can result in financial anxiety. Amanda, as a therapist, what's your advice? Like, what role does self-compassion play in helping us to overcome our anxiety?
I think that, first of all, knowing how our brains and bodies work really is such a significant advantage in going through life, and just kind of understanding all of the kind of predictable and idiosyncratic ways that humans are not logical creatures. So understanding, first of all, that anxiety, what we experience as anxiety, there are a lot of different components that we can understand better. Number one is understanding that primarily this is an alarm system, that things that feel really distressing in the body are there first and foremost for us to be able to alert to anything that may endanger our safety. But anxiety is not it. Once our attention has been brought to something, ideally what we want to do is be able to have some process to tell ourselves, okay, anxiety, good job. You have flagged my attention. My attention has been successfully brought over to this thing that may be dangerous to me. Now, anxiety, I need for you to get out of the way as much as possible so that I can do the work of being able to solve the thing that may be threatening. When the threatening thing was a tiger that could jump out and get us, that required one kind of a response. But when the it's not a tiger that's dangerous, it's not being prepared for a future where we're not going to be able to work and provide ourselves with income to support ourselves, that is a very different mobilization, behavioral and intentional. And that is not the kind of thing that is very well calibrated to the way that this alert system in our brain and body works. Another thing to keep in mind is the difference between a stressor and a stress response and having anxiety. So with stress, we have lots of things like we talked about debt, et cetera, that can feel very stressful to us in the body, that we may have a lot of very anxious thinking around. But the difference is that when that stressor is resolved, the feeling goes away. When we have anxiety around this area of our life, even it doesn't matter in some ways what the circumstances are. We will look around and find something that we use to explain why we feel so yucky in that sense. So we want to be able to attach the things that we're worried about to something that we have a chance of resolving, as opposed to those things that are more free floating anxiety, which is always with us. That requires a different kind of understanding, I find.
I think Marco must have some tips, because he's already told us he doesn't compare himself to the S&P 500. He's not comparing himself to his neighbors. So it seems like a healthier existence. Marco, in your experience, how does financial anxiety manifest, and how do we manage it better?
My strategy is basically to cut off a lot of news, cut off a lot of informations. And so just to give you an idea, I haven't lived with a TV for 30 years, maybe 40. And I usually look at my portfolio once a quarter and see if there is anything that needs to be done. So that is certainly one way of eliminating a lot of stressors. It's just not focusing on it all the time and to think about something else. Having said that, it's also true that some people really struggle with money, and I can certainly empathize with how scary that is and how important it is to understand one's feelings and work with them. So I'm so glad that Amanda is doing that work because it is really a great advantage to be able to manage your own feelings, because when you're in fear, for example, your cognitive capacities are not there. And so if you really need to solve a problem and find a solution to your employment problem or your financial problem, you need to have a clear mind. You cannot get there if you are in a fight or flight mode, and if your amygdala is all activated. So yeah, being able to bring you back to a state of greater calm is essential to try to solve your problems. So my strategy is really cut off a lot of the noise so that I don't have to make continuous decision and think about things one at a time, and not think about money for the longest possible span of time.
Yeah. So do your best to create peace so that you can make clearer, more thought out decisions. Leah, how does financial anxiety, does it disproportionately affect women of color? And do you have mindful strategies that you offer to help mitigate?
Absolutely. Financial anxiety disproportionately affects women of color. There's many reasons why. There's, again, the childhood experiences, but also as a Black woman or Latina or Indigenous, any woman of color, when we go into work and we know that there is the wage gap. So we know that there's enough information out there. We know we're not getting paid what we're valued at. We know that we also tend to have to walk through the world and at work, having on this like exterior of speaking correctly, doing things correctly, having to be perfect. And so that impacts the ability to be able to manage money and the decisions that we're making. And then also when it comes to maybe at work, when a woman of color wants to go up for a promotion, right? There may be some anxiety around that, and she may not feel that she's able to negotiate, or if she does, she's not going to get the salary that she really is deserving of experiencing. So that financial anxiety is a very real thing. That word is so tough to say right now, disproportionately affects women of color. And with that awareness, though, there's also opportunity. And so with my clients, we talk about those things. We talk about how we can show up at work every day in our life and just doing the best that we can. And also what I talk to my clients about is that the financial industry, was not built for women or women of color in mind. And so back to what Marco was talking about with comparison, is it's really easy for women of color that we compare ourselves to where we should be by a certain age, how much money in our retirement accounts, all those things. But then to also remember to give ourselves compassion, be like, I can't compare myself to that because that system was not made for me. So what is important for me now? How can I approach my finances, my goals, my dreams, and live the life that I really, truly want to experience and continue on that path? So mindfulness, breathing techniques. I love what Marco was talking about by quieting all the noise. I absolutely did that early on in my journey of healing. And then also just counteracting all of that with as much good as possible when it comes to music, what we're reading, what we're listening to, who we're around, all those things to be able to soothe ourselves and to be able to open up the opportunities so that we can have more gratitude and compassion and love in our lives. And then that is what's truly fulfilling. And everything else, I tell my clients all the time, like, everything's going to be okay. We always will find a way, because if that's one thing I know, is we're able to do that as women of color, and people in general, that we can find our way.
I love it. I love prioritizing the good things in your life. And to what you were saying about the financial services industry not being designed to serve women or minorities, I think if you take a step back, even more so, the industry is not designed to deliver people peace. It's like, even watching CNBC on TV, all the professionals that I know, they turn the volume off. They're like, oh, if you watch with no sound, it's much more calming. Otherwise, you just hear the excitement in people's voices, and it gets you tense. And insurance companies are trying to sell annuities because people are afraid of losing money. So they're always trying to cater to your fear and your insecurities. Leisa, I want to go to you.
I would just echo what everyone's saying. And I feel like the magical combination for what I've learned over this journey is looking inside, figuring what we've been talking about out from an inside perspective, but then also figuring out how the money can reflect and support your life that you're really wanting to live. Like, it's both and. Look inside and also get your money house in order. That's the magical combination for me.
Just as a tactic, Leisa, how important is an emergency fund to mitigating people's financial anxiety?
Incredibly important. Yeah, I'm often amazed when people say that they don't have the resources to be able to to deal with an emergency situation. And so first and foremost, whenever I'm working with folks, I'm asking them, okay, what do you have available? How can you make sure that you've got some kind of emergency fund? Preferably, a lot of my clients are self-employed, so 6 months of resources so that they can breathe and have the peace that you were talking about.
Wow. Well, this has been a rich conversation on mindful wealth. Thank you, Inspired Moneymaker, for tuning in to the end. Thank you to the panelists. If there's one big takeaway from today's discussion for me, it's that money isn't just a tool for getting by, it's a tool for living a life that reflects your values. In addition, slow down, cut out the noise, prioritize the good things in your life, and really take time to identify your values. Because when we bring mindfulness into our financial decisions, we can open the door to more peace, purpose, and freedom. The more intentional we are with how we earn, spend, and invest, the more we can align our money with our deeper life goals. So to make it practical, here's your call to action for this week. Take 10 minutes to reflect on one area of your financial life where you feel disconnected. Maybe it's your spending, your savings, your investing, and then ask yourself, is this area aligned with the person that I want to be and the life that I want to live? Once you've identified that area, choose one small action to bring it back into alignment. So maybe that's pausing before your next purchase and asking yourself if it brings you joy. Maybe it's taking a step toward ethical investing. Maybe it's just sitting down to meditate on your financial goals for the future. Whatever it is, start small, but start mindfully. I want to thank our incredible guests, the panelists today, for sharing their wisdom and stories from mindfulness to financial planning, ethical investing, gratitude. We covered a lot. I encourage everybody to follow our guest. You can find financial coach and author Leisa Peterson at wealthclinic.com. Check out her book, The Mindful Millionaire. Financial therapist Amanda Clayman is at amandaclayman.com. As mentioned, she's also the Audible original podcast host of Emotional Investment, and check that out. We have Marco Vangelisti in Italy right now. It was great to hear how he aligns his finances with sustainability and social responsibility. Visit and follow more from him at ek4t.com. And finally, wealth and wellness coach Leah Davis. You can find her at leahcoaching.com. Thank you to producer Bradley for the fantastic planning and editing of today's episode segments. And please join us next week. Our Inspired Money episode will be navigating student loans, strategies for managing and paying off student debt. That's a big one. That's Wednesday, October 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, make sure that you subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everyone.